TIL that Nikola Tesla tried to sell several governments on a death ray that would destroy armies and planes from 200 miles away. Tesla was a genius and certainly ahead of his time. The fundamental difference was that Tesla was for the people. He wanted free energy, and that was never going to happen during the era of the robber barons. Many of his ideas were ridiculed and stifled, but still were utilized ultimately by the government upon his death, as all his notes and inventions were seized and mostly likely given to various agencies that then pursued those inventions, developing many of them to function. Edison steals a bunch of stuff from him, the government takes the rest, and yet the only reason we didn't kill the shit out of ourselves as a species with his death ray is because, like Dr. Erskine's super soldier serum, it was only in his head? Bullshit. If it was viable, unbelievable gobs of cash would have been thrown first at him and then taken from him later. And it'd have replaced a lot of flying that was otherwise what we had to do. As much as he was a genius, Tesla history of discrediting himself, making outlandish claims. I've heard that when people studied his basic ideas for these kind of weapons, it's what these days we are researching as particle beam weapons. Most of his plans collapsed due to lack of funding, so if he'd had enough money behind him, maybe he could have built a death ray. As much as he was a genius, Tesla history of discrediting himself, making outlandish claims. I've heard that when people studied his basic ideas for these kind of weapons, it's what these days we are researching as particle beam weapons. Most of his plans collapsed due to lack of funding, so if he'd had enough money behind him, maybe he could have built a death ray. Anybody who ever thought Tesla made an outlandish claim has likely found out by now that Tesla was right. It just took the world another 100 years to catch up. WAPs apparently use zero-point power to provide anti-gravity and scalar particle beam weapons. Go figure. If he had full funding for a lifetime, he would have caught us up to some of the aliens World War II if more nations had bought from Nikola Tesla. Edit don't know why that got downvoted? Saying the world would have been reduced to smoldering ash if more countries bought death rays. Apparently, nobody thought that would be the likely outcome. Unfortunately, it wasn't real. He was dead broke at this point and trying to find ways to make money, like his earthquake generator. Man was a genius beyond his years for sure, but the mythology surrounding him can be a little much, considering how impressive the real things he invented are. So Professor Farnsworth is the cartoon embodiment of Tesla. Kooky, obsessed with inventions that cause or predict death, constantly fighting with other scientists and inventors. Wernstrom has amazing ideas that nobody else really understands. Just happened to have watched this a few minutes before seeing this thread. Conspiracy or not, it was quite interesting and offers valuable insight into Tesla that doesn't seem to be mentioned by anyone so far. If you have a functioning and practical death ray that can destroy armies from 200 miles away, you don't need to sell it to anyone. Governments will be lining up at your door and dumping wheelbarrows of money at your feet. He did all his great work before 50. Then it's several generations of saying crazy shit. You can also look at Einstein, Oppenheimer, Nash, and most scientists did their best work in their youth. I'm glad this never happened. If it had, he would be remembered more in line with Renaud Ghosh, Gabriel J. Rains and Louis Fieser, who created VX gas, modern landmines and napalm respectively. What's with everyone hating this man these days? Bitch, he actually built the death ray, but they destroyed it before it could be used. Like, don't you do any research at all? Loser. He actually did sell it, but once they figured out he was really trying to give everyone on Earth free wireless energy instead via charging the ionosphere, they shut him down. I think there was a proposal for a killsat that can kill planes from LEO 100 to 200 kilometers. Actually constructing the thing is a violation of space treaties, though. Till you don't need evidence to make extraordinary claims. No documentation exists say he tried selling them and didn't the government size his work? Check out Goliath by Scott Westerfeld if you want to see a story with Tesla's death ray at the heart of it. Beautiful artwork in the novel as well. Trump's grandfather went through all his papers after his death so that Donald could have been the ultimate Bond villain with his death ray. During World War II, after realizing they didn't have the materials to create an atomic bomb, the Japanese put all of their RD into a death ray. Death ray. Fiddlesticks, why? It doesn't even slow them up. Reminds me of the Venture Brothers pilot when Rusty brought a death ray to a world peace summit for inventions to better mankind. Isn't there a conspiracy theory that he built his death ray, miscalculated his target's range and caused the Tunguska event? A concept which is now being used in concentrated solar power arrays. Edit my bad, it was Archimedes' death ray. Dumbass. Technology isn't intrinsically good or evil. It's how you use it. Like the death ray. Professor Hubert J. Farnsworth. Yeah, so they assassinated him, took all schematics of his work, burned his lab down, and never brought it back up. His idea of wireless power in New York was amazing. Even though I have never understood the science behind it, it's not a stretch to say Tesla invented the 20th century. But he was also more than a little crazy. One of my favorite Charles Addams cartoons. It's an idea but is always a weapon, invites and encourages people to get their own or find a defense. Yeah, and then the bankers bought it and put it on satellites. This is common knowledge where I'm from. He could have definitely made it work, even if it was massively impractical. Sauce, I'm a drunkie. He should have tried selling them as machine to clone objects. I saw all about it in a film. Well, he's not wrong. The US military had a secret plasma railgun project back in the 90s. He would have gotten away with it, too, if it weren't for you meddling kids. Man was a genius. If had funny, he would have changed the world we live in today. I thought he shared the plans with the major nations equally. Thoughtful face. Well, at least we didn't get death rays and nuclear weapons. Ah, the super constitution approach to a utopian society.